When Dangula met a man who she fell in love with, she believed that he was a good man, so she trusted him when he told her to travel to another country for work. But Dangula did not know that this would end up leading to a life in the darkness and eventually lead to her own death. This is the trafficking case of Danguole Rasalaite. So hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Elin and on this channel I cover true crime cases that have occurred in the Nordic countries. It feels like it was so long since I filmed. I filmed my last video before I went on my little break, so it was actually pre-filmed, so this is the first case that I'm filming after my little break. But now I'm back and I'm so excited for this new season of true crime cases. To me, fall is such a true crime season. I mean, in the Nordic countries, it starts getting dark and Halloween is coming. And I know that summer is not over yet, but I'm just super excited for the cases that are coming out this fall. Anyway, let's get into some content warnings before I start this video. The content warnings are suicide, trafficking, sexual assaults, and rape, so if that's something that you don't want to watch, then I suggest you click out of this video right now. With that being said, now let's get into the case that happened in Lithuania and Sweden. So Danguole Rasalaite was a Lithuanian girl born on the 19th of May 1983, and she grew up in a small and poor village on the countryside of Lithuania. Straight from the start, Dangule's life was not easy. She lived in a rundown apartment with her mother and oldest sister, and when she was only 14 years old, her mother actually abandoned her and left her alone in Lithuania after she moved to the United States with a man that she had just met. Dangule's mom wanted to make a better life for herself as she had had enough, so she just completely ignored the fact that she had children and she left them behind. So from that point forward, Dangula and her sister pretty much had to provide for themselves, and things got even worse when Dangule's sister decided to move to Germany. Dangule's father was serving a life sentence in prison, and he had overall not had a big part in her life, so from this point forward, she was pretty much all alone. And this was not an easy place or time for a young girl to grow up alone, since the city was poor and the chance of violent sex crimes was high. She often had to escape from men who tried to sexually assault her on the streets, and one time she actually escaped from a situation where she was about to get gang raped. One day, Dangula received a letter from the United States from her mother, and in the letter her mother wrote that she wished to no longer be a mother and renounced her parental rights from that moment forward. Dangula's mother had started a new life in America, and being a mother just did not fit into her new lifestyle. And this was of course super hard for Dangula, and when she was only 16 years old, she met a man who would soon become her first boyfriend. This man actually treated her well, and he was very loving and affectionate towards her, so this was something Dangula was not very used to, and he basically became the first person that she had ever trusted. This man soon started talking about them moving away from the country to start a better life together, and he actually claimed to have connections in Sweden where she could work as a nanny or a cleaning lady. So they started planning their move to Sweden, and since Dangula was only 16 years old, she actually had to borrow an ID from her friend. Suddenly her boyfriend told her that he would not be able to come to Sweden, so Dangula would actually have to travel alone, and this was a big red flag. He told her not to worry as he would come soon after her, and he actually had a friend who would pick her up from the airport and take her to her apartment and show her around in Sweden. So on the 17th of November 1999, Dangula traveled to Sweden alone. At the airport, she was met by her boyfriend's friend as promised, and I will call him Nicholas in this video. Nicholas had a woman with him, and they first went to a cafe to eat and drink something. They told Dangule that they would have to keep her passport as safety until she had made some money so that she could pay back around 2,000 euros that she apparently owed him for the plane tickets and other things. Dangula did not like this, but she kinda did not have any other choice, so she was taken to a small town close to Malmö in Sweden. She was taken to a small one-bedroom apartment where she was told that she would be staying, and Mikolas and the woman then left her alone in the apartment. But when they left, they actually locked the door from the outside, so Dangula knew that she could not get out of the apartment, and she immediately started feeling like something was wrong. Dangula started wondering what was happening, and soon 5 men came into the apartment. They made it clear that they were there to rape her, and they ended up raping her and threw cash on the table before they left. Soon after, the door opened again and more men came to rape Dangula. This continued the whole night, and even if Dangula was scared and tried to make them stop, they just did not care. Dangula now realized that this was the job that she had been promised, and that she had been sold by her own boyfriend to a man in another country where she was sold as a prostitute. At this point in the case, I just want to talk a little bit about human trafficking, as I feel like it's an important subject to bring up in the video. Every year, millions of men, women, and children are trafficked all over the world. It can happen in any community, and victims can be any age, race, gender, or nationality. There are different types of trafficking, for example, trafficking of children, sex trafficking, and labor trafficking. Traffickers usually look for victims that are easy targets, and they might use methods to lure victims into trafficking situations. These methods can be, for example, violence, manipulation, false promises of well-paying jobs, or romantic relationships. This means that the victim is often tricked into the situation and has no idea what she's stepping into. Sometimes, for example in this case, it involves grooming, which is when the human trafficker simply seeks a vulnerable person in order to make them fall in love with them. In these cases, the human trafficker is usually very loving and charming towards the victim and showers her with gifts and attention, creating a trust between them. He often travels with the victim and takes care of her passport, making her unable to leave and pretty much trapped in the new country. The victims are often young women from poor countries, and they are lured with promises of regular jobs in richer countries, but instead are forced into prostitution. And there are many different factors, for example language barriers, fear of the traffickers, and/or fear of the law enforcement that frequently keeps the victims from seeking help, so this basically makes human trafficking a hidden crime. The trauma that the trafficked person has can also be so big that they don't even ask for help when they are out in public. Some indicators of a human trafficking victim might be dramatic change in behavior, the person is disoriented or confused or showing signs of mental or physical abuse. The person has bruises in various stages of healing, the person is fearful, timid, or submissive. The person is often in company of someone, or someone seems to be in control of the situation, for example, where they go or who they talk to, and sometimes the person might seem to be coached on what to say. If you believe that someone is being trafficked or being a trafficker, do not try to confront them directly, because this could actually be very dangerous. It's up to law enforcement to investigate the suspected cases of human trafficking, so just contact the police. Human trafficking is the 3rd largest source of income for organized crime in the world after drugs and weapons. It's one of the fastest growing criminal activities, and the global profits for sexual slavery are estimated to be up to $99 billion. So it's clear that it's a very big problem, and I feel like it's something that many people don't really care about. But anyway, at this point in the case, there came new people to have sex with Dangula daily, or basically rape her as it was against her will. And there was one man who would sometimes give her some extra money after the act, as he kind of felt sorry for her. And this did not mean that he would stop buying her or having sex with her, but one day he did suggest that he would forget to lock the door after leaving. Dangula of course agreed to this, so she left from the apartment and went into the man's restaurant. This man who helped her actually took care of her and let her live with him for a while, but soon it was clear what his motives actually were. He ended up locking her up inside of his restaurant's basement where she was once again sold as a prostitute, so basically he ended up doing the exact same thing to her. One day she met a man in the restaurant and they actually started dating. She was soon brought to a party with this man where she ended up meeting a 17-year-old girl called Milda, and during this night Dangula and Milda actually became friends. Later that same evening, Dangula told her about her whole life story but pretended that it was some other girl and that all of the things had not happened to her but to someone else. And they actually became so good friends in one night that the next day they already went to check an apartment together. They ended up moving in together, and soon Milda noticed that Dangula never really left the apartment and she would often be sad and just cry at night. But Dangula never really opened up about her life story to Milda, but one night they were drunk together, so Dangula ended up telling her what had happened to her. Milda promised to never tell anyone and she told Dangula to contact the police, but Dangula was afraid of getting killed if she would do that. Meanwhile, Mikolas was looking all over town for Dangula as he had lost his source of income. He was very angry and considered himself the owner of Dangula and he would not stop until he found her. Milda and Dangula soon realized that they were being watched as there were always men in cars outside of their apartment. They were super scared from this, and one day Milda had to take the bus to another city to go to get money from her mother and left Dangula alone in the apartment. She told Dangula to not open the door for anyone and just stay inside of the apartment. When she arrived at her mom's place, her mother told her that she had been receiving strange and threatening calls and demanded to know what was going on. So Milda ended up telling her the whole story and also told her mom that if anything ever happened to her and Dangula, then that was the reason. When Milda came back to the apartment and knocked on the door, no one opened. So she straight away knew that something was wrong and she went inside and saw Dangula being raped by a man. She screamed at the man to get out or she would kill him, and Dangula started sobbing and said, "Just stop, he will kill you." But Milda did not stop and she didn't leave Dangula's side. The man soon actually stopped the act and Milda grabbed Dangula and went into the living room. Soon the man came after, looked at Milda and said, "I don't know what to do with you." Milda recognized this man as it was an extremely dangerous, well-known criminal. The man then left, but before leaving he said to Milda, "Remember, it is not you who owns her, it's me." So I think it's pretty clear that it was Mikolas who was in the apartment. When Milda asked Dangula how Mikolas got into the apartment, Dangula said that he had his own key. This is when the girls realized that Mikolas had probably paid their landlord to get a key for himself. After this incident, the girls were too scared to sleep, so they actually started sleeping in shifts. One night, the girls had been drinking, so they ended up getting into an argument. They said that they would sleep on it, and when Milda was falling asleep, Dangula whispered in her ear, "I will always love you, you were like a sister to me, I will go now and take my life." It took a few seconds for Dangula to realize what had actually happened, and when she finally woke up, Dangula had already left the apartment. So she ran out of the apartment, but she could not find Dangula anywhere. Dangula had been wandering on the side of the road for a few kilometers before walking onto a motorway bridge. She got up on the railing and stood there for a while before she jumped off the bridge and onto the motorway. Dangula was severely injured, but she was actually still alive, so she was taken to the hospital and was in a coma for 3 days. At this point, her body just could not fight any longer, and Dangula ended up dying at only 16 years old on the 10th of January, year 2000. The police actually did not know who she was, but they ended up finding the apartment, and there they found 3 letters that she had written for friends at home where she described her story, how she had been tricked into sex trafficking, and how much she was suffering. The police tried to figure out who Mykolas was, and soon someone told the police that he was a tall Lithuanian man in his early 30s who used to work at a farm. The police went to this farm and actually found his car, but Mykolas was already gone. The police then found out that he had already traveled back to Lithuania a few days earlier, and from what I understood, he has never been found or caught after this. Dangula's case became probably the biggest case of trafficking in Swedish history. And her story actually inspired a movie called Lilya Forever that was released in 2002 and sheds a light onto the issue of human trafficking and sexual slavery. The movie received positive feedback all around the world, and it was both nominated and won many different prizes internationally. Various organizations estimate that there are about 500,000 women from the East working as prostitutes in the West. On the 1st of July, a human trafficking law was instituted against trafficking in Sweden, and the offense can now lead to imprisonment for up to 10 years. Lastly, I just want to say that if you know or suspect anyone of being a victim of human trafficking, then please don't hesitate to contact the police. Even if you just suspect something, it's better for the police to check the situation than to just let it be. But that's all that I have for this case, and it's just awful how Dangula had to suffer basically her whole life, and when she finally found people that she thought she could trust, they all ended up betraying her. I understand why Dangula just could not take it anymore. I mean, the pain that she had to suffer was probably just enough for her, and I hope that she is resting in peace. But I will wrap up the video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I will see you in my next case. Goodbye, everyone.